What company policy at your job might actually be illegal? Worked at a law firm. Attorneys were salary and support staff was hourly. They required all employees to clock out anytime they went to the restroom. Attorneys didn't care because they were salary. Support staff didn't object because they didn't want to risk the jobs. Young female attorney starts. They of course don't mention that during the interview process. Orientation they mention it and she laughs because she thinks they are joking. Within a couple of weeks HR approaches her because we noticed you're not clocking out for your restroom breaks. She tries to explain very calmly that 1, it's illegal and 2, what's the point? She's salary. They keep insisting that she has 2. All of a sudden she bellows, you don't need to know how long my shoots take. They didn't bother her again. I got pulled into my manager's office at a retail job one time after one of the new hires told me that they were getting paid more than I was. As I was training him, I was pretty pissed off and I wasn't quiet about it. So he informed me that it was against company policy to discuss our wages. I told him that that was illegal and he just stared at me like I wasn't supposed to know that. We had to work in the lab, even when the water was off in the building. This came from up high. Our lab boss just told us to look busy and do paperwork so we would not get hurt. But the department chair thought it was fine to work without the ability to wash your hands or use the safety shower. Also the bathrooms did not work, but apparently that is not something an employer has to provide. I worked in a mine site and our lab had the water shut off for a day to replace a pipe that was corroded. We had portable eye wash stations that were pressurized with air so we were able to continue working. If we didn't have those stations no work would have been performed that day because that is absolutely a legitimate safety concern. Completely unacceptable. You should have called OSHA. We're prohibited from attending and participating in any type of political gathering and or protest. We're also prohibited from using personal money to donate to charity. My last job forced everyone to come in 15 minutes early before the store opened at 10 AM, and your employment was threatened if you weren't there for this 9:45 meeting. However, we only got paid to work from 10-6. Say what you will about it just being 15 minutes, but that crap adds up over the course of the year into around $1,000 plus a year that was unaccounted for. Anyone know if that's actually illegal? I quit because of tiny BS like this throughout the establishment, but no one else really fought back on this rule. While I thought it was ridiculous, definitely illegal, and you can file a wage claim with no issues. The burden of proof that they paid you will be on them. Victims or witnesses to a crime on our property are not allowed to call 911. If there's a crime committed there, anything ranging from a small petty theft up to debauchery or murder, we are to notify our direct manager first. Even if the manager isn't working that day, then that manager is to call his or her manager, who then calls the security office about the incident, and together they decide whether or not to call the police. Thankfully, this hasn't happened yet. Just quit today, but I'm 99% sure you can't take a break unless you order something off the menu. I've never had a break there except when I sneak into the bathroom and pretend to take a crap just to sit down. As a nurse I often pretend crap, lock myself in the employee bathroom so no one can bother me for 10 minutes. People often come knocking though. My last job worked me full-time hours but called me a part-timer to frick me out of benefits. I got out of there as quickly as I could. Your state labor board would love to hear from you. Not my current workplace but my last one. We'd fill out timesheets up to 4 weeks in advance and got told to just put 8 hours a day in each day. If we worked more than 8 hours a day, happened frequently, we got told that the timesheet said 8, so that's what we were paid for. Anybody who refused to fill them out ahead of time usually got let go pretty soon thereafter. 1. Fill out 4 weeks of timesheets. 2. Don't show up for work. 3. Wait 4 weeks. 4. Sue for unpaid wages. 5. Boss has to either pay you or admit to violating labor laws. As a bartender, we're not allowed to call 911. Each call counts as half a point against our liquor license. If we need officer assistance we have to call a non-emergency line. I've heard of real emergencies happening needing real medical attention and the bartender getting fired for calling 911. That sounds like a fault of the liquor law itself. Not illegal but a real pain in the butt. Only 50% of sick leave could be unscheduled. I ended up filing for FMLA. When the doctor was filling out the paperwork I explained why and she said, "Who schedules being sick? No wonder I have to fill out so many of these forms." One of my co-workers had about 400 hours of sick leave accrued that they will never get paid for. The assembly procedure written for the optical components of a space-based telescope for the USAF. All optical assembly must be done in the nude. That line made it through 3 contractor reviews, 2 USAF reviews, and 1 NASA review. So when time came for the assembly, the one young lady on a team mostly populated with old guys from Switzerland said frick no. The procedure was redlined and signed off very quickly. Haha, what the frick? All optical assembly must be done in the nude sounds like the kind of thing that you slip in to see if anyone will notice. If I leave my job before working there for 1 year, they will deduct $500 from my final paycheck for training. We don't actually do any training at work that the company would have to pay for. Also, probably not illegal and not technically a company policy, but we don't get bathroom breaks. We have unlimited PTO for our group, but we've been warned never to use it. When layoff time rolls around, they pick the person who has used the most PTO, so calling in sick twice a year could cost you your job. They also make us make up our hours to reach 40 when we are sick, even though a salary. I doubt that's illegal, but come flu season it spreads through our office like wildfire because no one is allowed sick days. That sounds quite illegal. The last restaurant I worked at, there would be a 35% tip out for all servers that would just go to the owner. Not only that, but some of the servers were just paid regular hourly wages, but still collected tips that went straight to the owner. On top of that, there would be times where you can ask, "Hey, where's my paycheck?" and the boss would give you a 20. Say he'll give you another 100 next week, and then the rest a few days later. Then you ask again for that week's paycheck and it's like, didn't I just pay you pretty fricked up and IDK why I worked there as long as I did? No, this was not Amy's baking company. My old boss was like that. I tried reporting him and labor laws say I can't file a report until the 10th late day. He always paid me the last of my check on the 9th late day. Son of a b knew the law. They almost went under, but some idiot saved their restaurant. If you get injured at my work while on the clock, you must see the in-house medical staff and have a drug test before leaving. But they charge you $500 if you see the in-house medical staff. I'm pretty sure that's not legal, and I know loads of other employees who don't report injuries because of not wanting to deal with the $500 charge. Super illegal. Report that crap immediately. My company requires certain employees, myself included, to take a 30-minute unpaid lunch break. That is legal, but I saw policy during training that said employees who take a break can't leave the building during their break. In Georgia, if your employer requires a break of 30 minutes or more, it can only be unpaid if the employee is free to do as they please during that time. Any stipulations to break time mean they have to pay you during that time. Luckily, the supervisor at my location doesn't care if I leave the building. I asked another employee about it, and she said they started that because people would go out during their breaks and come back late. I can understand not wanting staff returning late, but you discipline the act of returning late, not outright remove the freedom to leave on your lunch break. All the tips on carryout go to the manager, not the person working the register. Yeah, that's pretty illegal. I'm not sure if it's illegal, but it certainly did suck. I worked at a nursing home for a while and we weren't allowed to discuss our pay, and we weren't allowed to disclose to anyone that we were short-staffed. We'd have one nurse's aide for the entire wing and they were doing everything as fast as humanly possible. But if a patient complained that they were being ignored, which they were because of the staffing issue, we were just supposed to apologize and sit there and take them yelling at us and calling us lazy and not tell them the reason why. I hated that job. Backbreaking work, doing the work of 3 people, and everyone yelling at me all the time. A company I used to work for tried to do this, so I brought up that it was an illegal policy, to which they responded with, "Oh well, you signed a contract saying you can't." Just because you sign a contract, that doesn't make the policy legal, that makes the contract illegal, you dipshits. All female employees must report to the boss's room after closing. Turns out the boss liked tying up the girls. He made us stand from youngest to oldest and then moved in real close, not touching but almost. You all could hear him smell you and then scream about how your uniform is messed up. This lasted a few weeks before someone's father came in red-faced and angry. We all had to fill out forms when it happened. And who else was there? Short story, it was a bad time at McDonald's. One of the sales jobs I used to have, if you did not meet a quota you were fired, as it is with most sales jobs. Thing is, my buddy who was let go was forced to sign this paper that basically said they warned you if you did not meet a quota you would be fired. He signed. They let him go. Signing that paper on the way out basically fricked him and he could not get unemployment because he signed a paper that said they warned him in advance, which they did not. I had a slow month shortly after and they let me go, and I knew the paper was coming and I obviously refused to sign. The two managers basically had a panic attack and said I had to sign it. My exact response: what are you gonna do? Fire me if I don't? And I left. My manager chased me out of the building trying to rescind the firing. My guess is they did not want to pay the fines they would get for having a former employee apply for unemployment. You have to show up 15 minutes early. You're considered late if you aren't 15 minutes early, and you aren't paid for the 15 minutes. I think you should be 15 minutes early to be professional, but you shouldn't be forced to do it. The last job I worked at was a school. We had part-year teachers and year-round employees, operations staff, but the year-round employees technically got PTO hours that were equivalent to the time the part-year employees had off. Something like 350 hours. We weren't allowed to use our PTO hours and they were just converted and paid out as a bonus at the end of the summer. I was the IT person and was a year-round employee. We had some leadership changes and I put in 2 months notice because I didn't like where the school and its leadership were headed, but I wanted to give them time to find and train a new person before I left. I had about 200 hours of accrued PTO at that time. The school network tried to frick me and said that I would just lose those PTO hours when I quit. Apparently I was the first person to question that and fight them on it. Eventually they caved and kept me on the payroll for a month and a half after I left because they didn't have a system for paying out PTO mid-year. The turnover rate was really high. 60-something people quit just at my school in the 3 years I was working there. There were only 1 or 2 people left from the original staff after 5 years at another school in the network, and I was the first person to get a PTO payout. A couple companies ago they'd claim that new employees weren't actually employees until completion of training, so not subject to minimum wage or other employment law. They'd also give us a badge that gave us access to federal secure sensitive areas where we were required to go and observe as part of training. That always struck me as something a non-employee shouldn't be able to do. I'm from Alberta, now I live in Montreal, and the laws don't protect you in either province. If you've been there less than 3 months, you can get fired for looking at someone wrong. I'm not sure about the wage though. I think they're required 3D to pay minimum wage. When I was 15, I worked at a fast food restaurant. The laws in my area didn't allow me to work past 8 o'clock in the evening because of my age. My shift managers would force me to clean the bathrooms after my 3 to 8 p.m. shift was over. If I didn't clock out before 8, they would change my clock out time with their managerial privileges to make it seem like I had left at the proper time. I didn't get paid for the extra time I spent cleaning bathrooms. Others have already mentioned this, but talking about pay rates was highly frowned upon in that particular restaurant. I worked there for 2 years while making barely above minimum wage, and I didn't even realize that my rate was so low until I mentioned it to my new, better shift managers. One last incident was that one of my shift managers physically harassed me when I was 15. I told my boss, and she was horrified, but the higher ups dismissed the issue. That sick shift manager quit shortly thereafter. I'm pretty sure this wasn't company policy, but I remember a few of us were comparing notes on our salaries and what type of raises we had. Our manager caught wind of this. I don't remember if she overheard us or someone passed along the information and told us that we could lose our jobs for having discussions like that. I'd never heard of such a thing and looked it up, mostly out of curiosity since we'd already found out what we were making. Turns out that companies cannot squelch employees talking to each other about what they make. not currently working the job in question anymore, so I feel I can say it readily enough. As a pizza delivery driver, for many chains, you sign off that you waive your right to a break even if you work 8 hours or more. Frequently pulled 9 and 10 hours shifts, sometimes even up to 12 hours without a break, all the while making less than minimum wage while on the road. For customers who frequently think the delivery charge goes to the driver, when most frequently it is collected by the store instead, so they don't tip. Add to that your robbery target, and even if you feel your life is threatened, if you fight back against your attacker you will get fired. Double quick if you are legally carrying a weapon yourself. Federal labor laws regarding tipped employees require that you make at least minimum wage including tips. Employers have to make up any difference if the tips earned don't make their hourly rate equal to the minimum. I'm going to throw my own in here since it inspired me to make this. So we aren't allowed to put out fires, no matter the context or size of the flame. We will lose our jobs. So to enforce this, my company removed every fire extinguisher from every office and every company vehicle. The owner of a local restaurant steals 12% of the servers' wage and helps pay for the manager's salary. Was ethically wrong but technically not illegal until Congress passed the federal budget when they slipped in a page stating that it is now illegal to pay a manager's wage by stealing from the servers. This was passed at the end of March 2018. I brought this to their attention and they claimed that 1. It's not illegal and 2. She's not a manager. What? It's definitely illegal but I don't feel comfortable reporting them until I have a second job lined up. Once I do, it's over for them. Breaking this law is a 1.1k fine plus the wages stolen per server. I just nailed a second interview today with a new company and will hopefully have a new job soon. They are about to taste sweet justice soon. Throw this on a pro revenge or something when it all happens. I wanna see this full story. Not a big thing but something that peed me off. I worked at a vet clinic and we punched a time card. Well, when the boss would count hours she would count 3 hours and 45 minutes at 3.45 hours. That means that every time anyone clocked out at an uneven number of minutes, we lost money. We spoke to her and the boss several times and nothing ever changed. I did the math when I quit and they owed me over $1,000 because of this error. 3 years. That's a lot for a part-time college student. I hope they don't use that kind of math when giving medicine to their animal patients. The way they classify holiday pay and Sunday pay, I live in a blue law state where you get time and a half on Sundays and holidays. Sundays hours are classified as their own hours. This makes it harder to earn OT on our stubs. However, when it's the week of a paid holiday they group Sunday and the paid holiday into overtime. It essentially screws you on any actual overtime that you have worked. I can't say for certain that it's illegal, but something just screams super unethical about it. Sounds illegal as heck. Call your EOC Regional Department of Labor and just ask if this is permitted. I'm the only man in my office. Let's say it's Friday afternoon and I want to use some benefits time to leave early. If it's just me and one other co-worker left, I can't leave because it's not acceptable to leave a woman alone in the office. She can go home early, though, and leave me here by myself. If you live in the US that is very illegal and definitely grounds for a lawsuit. I worked for one of the UK's biggest poultry suppliers. I once saw frozen cooked chicken over a year out of date get rebagged and new dates put on. These were promptly sent out to supermarkets and food manufacturers all over the place. The company has been in trouble for its hygiene practices before, but major happens to them. So glad to be out of that shithole. You should say the name so we can avoid them. The company I worked at for the past year doesn't pay a higher rate for overtime. The owner pays me weekly and reflects 80 hours on every paycheck that reaches overtime and then adds the rest of your pay as a bonus. Example, say you make $10 an hour. You work 90 hours in the 2-week pay period. Your pay stub would show the 80 hours at $10 PH and then a bonus of $100 for the 10 hours of overtime. Also, this job requires travel in a truck. Sometimes across country with 2 employees in the truck. The owner only pays the driver of the truck. So if you are the driver, you're on the clock. But when you stop to switch drivers you clock out and aren't paid for the time you're in the truck on the way there. The passenger doesn't get paid, despite being in the company vehicle away from home. Wage claim. Driving for more than 12 hours per day is illegal in terms of our state safety requirements, and if asked my company will deny we drive anything more than 12, but we regularly do 14 hours and sometimes 18-20 hours, not including our daily commute. You have been spotted by the money pigeon. Comment gimme gimme and he will bless you with good fortune. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.